Welcome to the Manifestation Lab. This is your host, Kelly Howe. From the grounded science to the mystical and unseen, we're investigating this big experiment we call life and finding what really works when it comes to manifesting a life that sets your heart and your soul on fire. Welcome to the lab. Oh man, I am so looking forward to bringing you today's episode. Today I sit down, I'm on the other side of the mic. I sat down with Jed and Brandy Taylor, some really great friends of mine. We've been friends for over 20 years, and they started a podcast a few months ago called Bread and Jandy Uncertified. It's phenomenal, y'all. If you want vulnerability and you love listening to people's life stories and what they've been through and what makes them who they are, you will definitely want to check their podcast out. It is so good. They sat down with me and we get into all things EFT, how EFT works, why it was a life-changing technique for me, some of the things that I've been through in life. There was really a period of time, I want to say it was around 2008, that life really just compressed me. There was a lot going on, big life changes, things that were hard to deal with, and it was really challenging. And I would say that that was probably the catalyst, at least a huge catalyst for me taking the path that I did with tapping and using it as my primary healing tool. So I'm really excited for you all to hear a little bit more about me. If you've been following along on the podcast, or, if you're somebody on social media that checks out my Facebook and Instagram, I'm just excited for you to get to know me a little bit better and hear some of the stories, some of the things that I've been through and what forged the way that I take action, who I am today, how I show up in the world. And hopefully it can be information about transformation in general and kind of the messiness of it and how it works and the things that I understand and the things that I don't understand. But Jed and Brandy are great. Their podcast is phenomenal. They're really great interviewers. So we had a ton of fun talking, and I'm just really excited for you all to hear a little bit more about me. So thank you to Jed and Brandy for having me on. And here is Bread and Jandy Uncertified and me on the other side of the mic.
Welcome, everybody. I am Bread.
And I'm Jandy.
And we are completely uncertified.
Hey guys, we're back again. And this week we have a super fun guest with us, Kelly Howe. We have known Kelly for 20 years, more than that.
At least. Yeah.
At least. So Kelly's husband, Chris, was in our wedding and Jed was in their wedding.
And I was very drunk at your wedding.
I was probably really drunk at your wedding once I drove you to the reception.
Both good parties.
The limo didn't show up.
Oh yeah. At our wedding?
Yeah. Something happened.
Yeah, that was a cluster for sure. That our Chris's mom's new husband really wanted to get a limo for us, but he's kind of a cheap ass. And I think he haggled with the limo driver and it pissed him off.
So he didn't come.
And he didn't come.
I just remember being there. And
we were at the church and no limo.
People needing rides. Like
the bride and groom.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that.
That was a mess. It was really, honestly, we thought it was hilarious. That's just kind of how we roll. Like, it didn't end up being a thing, but it's a good story to tell.
Heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I ended up driving you the rest of the night because I took you guys home at the end of the night.
Probably so.
Yeah. To the duplex.
Oh my God.
That's so funny.
The complex.
Remember
Meg was living on the other side of the duplex that we lived in. So it was just like a big party
happy family.
I housed quite a few family members.
Oh, yeah. Through the years, everyone's lived there.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So we go a really long way back. Mm-hmm. Have lots of fun stories and laughs, and I'm sure some of them will come up in this. But we also invited Kelly on because she's pretty much the epitome of what we like to share.
Oh, thank you.
An inspiration. She took a path less traveled and fought hard to get there, and it's been very worth it. And what she does now, we're going to let you tell all about that good stuff, but she helps other people get to the core of their issues and fight against anxiety, PTSD, all kinds of different things, and help live a more calm and balanced life.
I'm gonna back it up for a sec.
Yeah.
Back it up.
Been friends with Kelly's husband, Chris, since high school. We were really good buddies, and that's obviously how I think I ultimately met you.
Yeah.
And, but no, it was cool. I mean, we were neighbors after we got married. I think our kids called you aunt and uncle. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of history there, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of memories, just good friends.
Yeah. And I think you like the epitome of a good friend is that we can always kind of like come together and it's like nothing has changed. And sometimes we take different paths and we like aren't as close for maybe a year or so. And then all of a sudden we come back together and it's just the same. And
You pick up where you left off.
We've done that over and over and over again and nothing changes. I would say every time it just goes deeper and gets better.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And it's no pressure. It's not somebody you have to talk to every day or, know, but if you ever needed something, you can count on each other in a heartbeat, no matter where you're at 100%. In the journey or how long it's been since we've seen each other. And
100% life givers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I love you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Heck yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, we admire you because you have followed your passion, and that's kind of what we're highlighting on the show. And so it'd be pretty cool to hear your story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, it's honestly, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's like kind of choking me up a little bit because it hasn't been an easy path. It hasn't been, I would say things haven't been laid out in front of me, but just like you guys talk about, what do you call it? Like do the epic shit or yeah. I mean, it's like when there's that feeling inside that you just feel called towards something, if you pay attention to it, and you keep taking those steps, even if you don't really know where they're going, you will end up going the way that you want to with more joy and more passion and more love and more fulfillment. And I think that's my message and your message to people is like, just pay attention to that thing that lights you up and do it. Even if it's like one tiny step at a time. In fact, please start with one tiny step at a time.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't an easy path and it continues to not really be an easy path, but it's 100% worth it because my life every step of the way gets more fulfilling and more fun, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about.
Oh, and we talk about, human beings fully alive, like doing what they're passionate about, are going to be able to give back to the world in such a greater way.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about you. You're so passionate about what you do that you can give back in ways other people can't.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think even just, it's like there's two perspectives of it. Like if we each just find that thing and expand our energy and take that energy higher and higher, we inadvertently, even if we don't realize we're doing it, we're influencing the people around us in ways that we can't see. And then also when we're in that state, it's so much easier to take action. We usually, our abundance goes up and then we can share, financially, we can share with energy, with time, just all around. It's like, you can't go wrong when you follow that.
Absolutely.
So tell us what you do currently. Maybe then we'll back into it. But what do you do on a day-to-day basis right now?
Right.
For your job?
I call myself a coach for a lack of a better term. I would say I'm kind of a combination of a healer, a coach, a consultant, a mystic, whatever you want to throw in there. And coach was sort of the word that I came to just to kind of say like, listen, I'm putting myself out there to help you, but healer felt a little too like woo woo to me. And it didn't really encompass everything that I felt like I was doing. I specialize in a technique called EFT or emotional freedom technique. You'll hear people call it tapping. And this is a technique that really helps people reduce their stress. And as I say, like rewire their stress response at a very deep root level place. Like you were talking about earlier, Brandy. It helps people it does three really important things. It helps people process and release emotional charge. And it also helps to calm the nervous system down. And then when you do those two things, it helps unleash energy that's been trapped inside so that you can do all the things that we're talking about. So I think the magic in tapping is that it integrates so many different healing modalities kind of all into one. It's kind of a combination of ancient Chinese medicine mixed with modern psychology.
And the process is really fascinating. You release a lot, you reset your nervous system, what I call stress remodeling, so that you can actually, at a baseline level, not be triggered by the world in the same way. And then you can do the epic shit. You can move through the fear so much easier.
Right.
The fear will still be there.
Yes.
It will still be there. When you go to take a big step, it's going to show up again, but you have a really magnificent tool to help yourself feel safer and move through it.
So like we were telling our story, talking about, we call it just doing the hard work, going through the process of self-discovery and just, peeling the onion back and all that good stuff. But we kind of go by the formula that situations in your life create the beliefs, whether they're true or false, that create the thoughts and the emotions and therefore the actions.
Definitely. All that.
I would, as you tell us what you're doing, how that plays into that, the EFT part of things.
Right.
And just maybe expand on that a little bit because you've got more of the technical side.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways you can use tapping. So you can actually just tap on these acupoints. They're the same points that you use in acupuncture, but you tap with your fingertips. And instead of creating electrical charge with a needle, you just create an electrical charge with pressing those two things together. So you can use tapping as what I call like over the counter. So you can use it for daily baseline stress, like, ooh, I feel anxious. You can tap and usually you'll feel yourself kind of calm down a little bit. But the real magic is using tapping on root cause memories, right? So the things that happened to you in the past that were traumatic, and those can be big and small, but in every traumatic event, there's what I call an energy signature that stays with us. So that's a more like physical energy that gets locked inside of us. Our systems are designed to kind of hold on to that stuff so that it can keep us safe in the future. So tapping goes back and really identifies, okay, I have this memory. I feel an emotional charge with it, which means it's still playing out inside. If I think about this thing that happened to me, I feel this tightness in my chest, or I feel a nausea in my stomach or a tightness in my throat. That means that there's some sort of cord or hook or connection still hanging on from the past. So tapping comes in a really systematic way to start to break those cords away. And as the nervous system calms down, the brain starts to calm down. There's a fear center called the amygdala in the brain. And tapping has shown on fMRI to calm that fear center down very quickly. And as you start to calm the brain down and brain waves slow down, the body starts to feel safe, your mind starts to throw forward higher clarity, right? I think you start to get in touch with that higher self, with God, with universe, that higher intelligence. And so as you heal your trauma, it gets very easy to see and get clarity on, I can see how I'm still playing this out in the future, right? And along with that, you mentioned the beliefs, right? So in these traumatic events, there's usually a part in our subconscious that decides something like, I'm never going to be this again. I'm never going to shine like that again because it's not safe. I'm going to, for example, if someone were to, this is just a really obvious example, but somebody were to have a sexual assault, for example, a lot of times they'll start to put on weight after that because something deep inside of them decided it's not safe to look like this. Thin people aren't safe, that kind of thing. And their subconscious will start to create blocks, and it does it physically a lot of times. So as you heal the trauma, you also start to see the beliefs clearly. And when you can see them, that's when you have the power to start to shift them so clearly. And you start being able to take action in a different way when you aren't automatically running from this old trauma, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. And I've gotten to come and see you on multiple occasions and work through lots of old stuff and fears and, but I also use tapping, like you said, as kind of the over the counter as well, where, it's so great to just to know the tapping points and to be able to work through it. And even if I don't know what to say, like you said, it can bring me down a level of like where I might not kill someone at that moment. I might be able to handle myself a little bit better. But also like, and your sessions are energy charged. Like you come in and you start digging in and leading you through a tapping session. And the things that come up are things that I don't even think about or that I sometimes don't even realize are still affecting me. They're things that I'm like, I've dealt with this, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then it comes up and it is so emotionally charged. Like I plan my sessions around how long can I not be in public because I'm probably going to bawl my eyes out.
Yeah.
God knows what's going to happen during this. It's going to take a minute to recover. But it's a
profound release. It really is.
Yeah. And eye-opening of what my triggers are and why I'm still reacting in this way. And it even just bringing awareness to it and being able to release some of it helps how you move forward in such a great way.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of really important things, and that being that sometimes, or most of the time, I would say, we don't know what the root cause is. And one of the ways that we start to investigate that is to just look at what's going on right now. Like what's glitchy, what's going on, who's triggering you right now, what is triggering you in life right now. We actually use the tapping on that first. So we will say like, okay, this person I ran into said this thing and I instantly felt a charge there, right? I felt my body react to it. That is a light bulb. So we say, oh, there's something bigger going on here, right? So we start to tap on that. And I'll say, okay, what's the emotion? How does that make you feel? And usually it's like, oh, it makes me sad. It makes me frustrated. Okay, so we start tapping on that. And then, like I said, as the brain starts to calm itself down and the body starts to relax, the brain starts throwing forward memories and experiences that are connected to that same feeling and that same emotional charge. So this is where we start with working on, say, a coworker. And this person that's driving is absolutely batshit crazy. And we start tapping on the frustration and what's going on there. And then all of a sudden we get a flash in our mind of, wait a second, why did I just think of this little boy that was in my third grade class that used to tease me? Right? So that is your subconscious mind saying, hey, this is important. This is connected. This is going to help you get to the root cause. So then we go back and we tap on the emotions that come up with that past memory. Now the adult self will come in and say, what? That's ridiculous. That happened in third grade. I'm totally over that. That happened so long ago. But if we get the mind out of the way and pay attention to the body, usually there's still a charge there and a physical feeling when we think about it. So we use the tapping on that past memory with this old experience. Sometimes another experience comes forward. And we just keep following it back and following it back and following it back until we get to the beginning of it. And when we can tap on the root emotional experience of that thing that happened so long ago, that's when you go to work the next day and that coworker that has been triggering you to an 8 or a 9, suddenly you're around this person and you can just see them from a higher perspective. You can see and not only see it, but feel that like, wow, I'm like at peace and that guy's being a total ass right now.
Right. Right.
So what if the guy is a total ass?
Well, then that's his journey, So that's a real great question. Either he's going to do something to trigger something else in you because these people come up to mirror these things, right? So he's either going to trigger something else, being his asshole self, something else that needs to be healed, or it's just going to feel totally different because that old stuff is processed and you'll be able to be like, wow, that guy's a total jerk. But instead of being triggered at an 8, it's only like a 1 or a 2. Yeah. And so you're not getting that like full adrenaline, really uncomfortable anxiety type charge with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can look at that person as like maybe with a little bit of, grace or, hey, thank you for being a dick because now I know what I needed to work on.
Totally.
What did I heal from because you were being a jerk?
That is absolutely true. And that is something that comes through a lot at the end of a session that people will go, thank God this guy did that because, man, I just got some like massive healing out of it. And my heart is open in a new way now because that guy was a real prick. Right. Poor girl picking on the guy.
I must have a lot of issues because like government and people, I get pissed.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there should be a lot of tapping going on in this country right now.
The only reason I survived the last 2 years is because I've been tapping the whole time.
Right.
Just been locked away in my house tapping.
All right. So if for anybody that may be listening that has no idea what emotional freedom technique is, like explain that a little bit more.
Okay. So
especially for guys maybe listening.
The dudes.
The dudes.
What questions do the dudes have specifically? They're like, what points or what like
why the hell would I do this?
Why? Oh, I think we just explained it because you got the asshole and you feel better. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No,
just like I've done it with you as well, but just like the process of how you start it and where you tap. One of the biggest reasons to tap, in my opinion, is that when we get triggered, we go into a stress response. And I always think of the stress response like a dial. Like
it can be all the way up and you're at a 10, or it can be like a 1 or a 2. And we're always like dialing up and down at all times. On one end, we've got the stress response, like fight or flight, like full on as high as it gets. And on the other side, it's all the way off and you're in a rest and digest. Okay. Now, when we get into fight or flight, there's very specific brain areas that light up and some of them that sort of go off of line. So what we've seen in studies is that the frontal lobes, when we start to get triggered and we start to get angry, the blood starts to drain out of them. Now, the frontal lobes are important because that's where we do our rational thinking. Okay. So, for example, if you get into an argument with somebody and you start going into fight or flight, the blood's going to drain out of that frontal cortex, go more into the hindbrain. And that is more the primal response center. Mm-hmm. So this is where we start to act more like animals rather than in our thinking brain.
Gotcha.
Okay. So this is the same with like if a kid sits down or an adult sits down to take an exam and all the information just goes away. It's like they've been triggered into that fight or flight response. The blood drains out of that frontal cortex and suddenly they can't think rationally, right? So I think one of the biggest reasons to do that is that we get to release that emotional charge, right? So that we're not like turning into Hulk when somebody pokes the wrong button.
Right.
But if we need to talk something out, we can stay in that rational thinking mind. And kind of to take that one step further, we've seen on MRIs that when people go into flashbacks, when they have a true full-blown flashback, when they're thinking about a memory, the left side of their brain, which is again more like linear time-oriented, goes offline and it goes into the right brain primarily, which is on the positive side is a very creative, open, expressive side of our thinking, but it doesn't keep track of time very well. So this is why people can flash back and literally be back in that moment. It's like all sense of time and awareness goes away. So if we're getting triggered, when we really get triggered big into something, that left side of the brain could be going offline too. And, we're just not rational in that place. We don't show up as our highest self because we're going into primal mode. We feel like we have to fight, flee, or freeze. I think for guys specifically, you guys tend to carry a lot of power. And I would say both men and women have big emotions, but men have powerful auras. They do. So if you're not managing the emotional content in that aura, you're going to be affecting people around you and turning into the Hulk when your frontal lobe goes offline.
Right.
I also think, and I think the world's changing some in this, but I feel like men aren't given as many opportunities to express themselves emotionally, or it just hasn't been as accepted. I don't know. There's a little bit of a stigma to it. Yep. Whereas I think brave men are able to go and do that and deal with their emotions and face their things. But I think there's been a little bit of a kickback on that to where it's more intimidating.
Oh, I totally see your point for sure.
To go and do that.
That's a great point.
And like I said, I feel like it's changing some, but I just feel like women, sure. I mean, like I cry all the time, emotions or whatever. Let's
certainly
totally acceptable.
Yeah, it's more acceptable for a female to be emotional. And for men, it seems like there's like a certain pocket of emotions that is socially acceptable that you can show, but it's less acceptable for a man to be sad, for example. I know that you don't feel like that because you've done a lot of personal
like anger and rage. And those mainly feelings.
For sure. For sure. But that's a great point, Brandy, that and this is like thousands of years of programming of, females are more allowed to do this. Although I will say culturally, that's been a problem too. It's like, oh, you're fine. Put that away, buckle that up, zip that up. You're fine, and totally discounting. I think just in general, that's been a worse and worse problem over the years for both people, male and female. But you're right. Men, I think, learn to kind of categorize and say like, okay, I'm going to express in this way. Part of the problem with that is that if we don't express it, we just turn into a powder keg. Right. And so then it all like blasts out all at once. And again, men and women are guilty of that same thing. But really, I think really important for men to kind of get in touch with the nuances of the other parts of the emotional experience.
Right.
And I think that you are a beautiful role model for that, Well,
thank you.
Yes, very much.
But we talked about this in previous, just telling about our story, for so many years, just reacting to everything. And then, feeling the emotions, the full spectrum of all the shit that's happened to you in your life and tapping or just simply feeling and processing.
Giving it permission to move through us.
Yep. And just getting the margin in your life to be able to like not react and have a moment to process. Yes, I want to rip this dude's fucking head off, but I'm not going to, because that wouldn't be good. Whatever. But extreme example. But the point is that it gives you a margin just to be able to have those choices. Yeah. And we talked a lot about just people not being aware of the choices that they have, and they're just in this constant state of busyness and just reaction, which is crazy and rampant in my opinion. But
I agree.
But it's cool to hear like the process behind it. From a brain.
Yeah,
brain
it's
level.
interesting. And I mean, I know when I found tapping, I had been through nursing school not that long before, maybe 5 years before. And people that are in the medical profession, I would say across the board, sort of, there's a little bit of an arrogance to, I know everything. And I think I had that. I know I did. And I know that I struggled with, if this was a real thing, like I would have heard about this. I for sure would have heard about this. Right. And I think the most surprising thing to me when I learned about tapping was, oh my God, there is a process. Like, yes, I can see how these things, I have this awareness. I can see how these things are triggering me. I can see how it's made it worse over the years. But wow, there's a process to actually undo this programming, this automatic response, because I would find that I was really aware. I could notice like, okay, that's triggering me. I would bring the awareness in. I would, go into compassion and try to let it move through. But I felt really stuck with, and then I'm going back and I'm meeting that same person at work the next day and I'm being triggered to a 10 again.
Right.
So that's where when I found tapping, I was like, holy shit, you mean that I don't have to be triggered at a 10 anymore? I can actually like do something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can be the same person because you're not going to change somebody else. They can do their thing and they can be as obnoxious as they always were. But the difference is how it affects you.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing is that because we are always in an emotional exchange with people and an energetic exchange with people, when we change our own energy, people show up differently. They, and even
I totally believe in that.
The total jerks, right? Yeah. Will like all of a sudden say something really nice and you're like, that's insane.
Weird.
Where did that come from? Because we walked in with a different energy. And I've just seen that happen thousands of times in ways that, every time I'm like, that is amazing. Yeah. So we can't change the other person and we never know how they're going to respond. And when people come to me with relationship work, I start off saying, I'm going to help you get to the root cause of what's going on. I don't know what that's going to mean for your relationship. I can't promise that it's going to bring you back together. I cannot, because when you get to the truth of what's going on inside, it might go the other direction and you guys might end up going different ways, but I will help you get to the bottom or as far down to the bottom as we can to get that clarity on what's going on.
Well, and for other people to be able to go in a healthy place and a loving place and interact in that way and realize that person's reaction is totally on them. Like as long as you're handling it the best way that you can, that reaction is their problem and not yours.
Yes. And it gets so much easier. One of the things I did want to bring up, kind of just to go along with this, is I remember one of the things before I found tapping that was really difficult and confusing was that I think in my mind, I could see the higher perspective and I could look at the person and be like, oh, they're very troubled, but my physical body would still have a very visceral, angry response or sad response, or, like I would end up having chest pain or, tightness in my muscles or whatever. So I was very frustrated and stuck in that point of like, I can see and I want to send compassion to this person. However, I'm still really fucking triggered. And so I think tapping does such a great job of integrating that like very real visceral experience in the body and integrating that higher self perspective so that you can be like fully embodied in that compassion and not just be doing it from a head space.
Right. So the energy feels the same throughout your whole body.
Yes.
Instead of just knowing what you should
like
be
sending
thinking.
compassion from your pinky toe, right? Like from all the body parts, not just like I'm thinking compassion. I want to be compassionate. It's like your whole body feels open to that person. And then you go to an even higher space with it,
Yeah.
even higher than the mind, because we know it's out there, right?
Yes.
Much, much higher.
Well, I think it'd be cool to hear a little bit more. So you were talking about, starting in nursing and with that medical background and what it took for you. Because like we talked about it, I can't remember if we were recording yet or not, but it wasn't an easy path to take. And you found resistance and
How long ago did you start this journey?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. In 2008, I think was when I found tapping for the first time. 2008 was the year. I was just thinking about this the other day because I tell the story of like there was this period of time where shit just got really stressful, and it was like one thing after another was happening, these big things. And 2008 was the year that my grandfather died in January on my birthday, which is like, oh man,
Yeah.
And then Chris's uncle committed suicide. Chris's mom got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. There was like two other really, I had Bennett. I had my second baby.
2 small children and you work nights.
I remember I had Bennett to the breast and he was nursing and we got the call that his uncle had committed suicide. Like I remember that moment so clearly. My dad had lost his job and moved into our house with us with Anna. Remember the girlfriend?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, his girlfriend. She drove me nuts. Ooh, she drove me to tapping. She really did.
That was a full house. But we have to thank her now because look at all you're doing.
But it was like and I wasn't really happy in my nursing career. I was working labor and delivery, and as much as delivering babies can be a ton of fun, it's kind of like working in the ER and you never know what's going to walk in. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes the most tragic and horrible things happen. And then working night shift and kind of just being burned out on my circadian rhythms not being right and my hormones being off and all that. But yeah, 2008 was the year that like it got real hard. And I think I went from being somebody who I consider to be pretty laid back and go with the flow and I can deal with anything and I can help you with your stuff and sure, I'll take that for you and I'll do that. And my stress got to the point where my body was having very obvious visceral reactions. And I didn't feel good. I was like nauseous all the time. My hands would shake on the way to work. It was just, looking back at it now, I was having a lot of like kind of mild PTSD type symptoms.
The physical red flags.
The physical red flags were hardcore. And I remember at first thinking, wow, there's something really wrong with my body. Like, what's wrong with me? Of course, my mind went to like, maybe I have cancer, maybe I have this, maybe I have that. And I remember a doctor that I went to in college because, of course, after I went on this journey to start looking at my stress and where does this really come from, I recognized that I've been stressed out my whole life, like decently stressed out, you know? And I remember a doctor saying like, well, in college, like, are you stressed? And I was like, no, I think I'm fine. I'm fine.
Right.
I'm fine, no, there's something wrong with me. I'm fine. My stress is fine. There's something wrong with my body, And have you been there?
Well, we were talking about Masood said when everything's chaotic, everything's normal. Mm-hmm. It just feels normal when everything's chaotic.
Yeah.
So
when
that's true. You're just living your life. Doing
that's your norm. Yeah. You don't realize that could be what's causing all the physical reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think I really was able to see from a higher perspective, like, oh, these things happened to me in my life. It made me who I am. I'm so grateful for the hard things I've been through. I had already gotten there, which was such a blessing. And I think it got me through a lot of hard times. However, I hadn't dealt with the unprocessed junk that was still running in the background. And to be honest with you, a lot of fear, just fear programming, and scarcity programming that was just in there from my whole life. And I believe from past lives and God knows whatever else, a lot of like ancestral, I think, fear and trauma that was playing out inside of me as well. But yeah, I found tapping when I was tipped over the edge and I didn't feel like I was showing up as my best self. And I remember I was kind of lashing out at Chris and looking around and doing the classic, like, my life is great. I have this beautiful home. I have these great friends. I have these wonderful children. We have all the money we need, of course there was room for expansion. It's not like everything was perfect, but I could see that I had a really great life. And yet I was still completely stressed and unfulfilled, really. Now is what I recognize. I was unfulfilled with what I was doing. And
And it's even more frustrating when you're in that place and you should be grateful for all of these things, but why is it not resonating? Why are you still sad or anxious or afraid or
I think this
whatever
is where,
it is.
and I love positive psychology, but I think that this is the area that they get it wrong, because we can think positive thoughts, but if our body is still holding on to that programming, it doesn't really do anything. It's like it just kind of ricochets off, and maybe will temporarily make us feel better. But I think this is where we need the stress remodeling. This is where we need that like deep release from the stuff that's been stored in there for so long, and to shift those old beliefs that we gathered along the way about who we are and how we show up in the world and, what the world is.
And we've talked about that, like with that model. You can white knuckle it. I mean, you can try to change your actions. You can white knuckle it for a little while, but in order to make that lasting change, you do have to go that much further and figure out what situations cause those false beliefs. And now what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, it's like, until we can get the body to feel safe enough to believe something new, this is another place where I feel like people go, oh, I found my belief and now I'm just going to believe this. Yeah. Right. It's kind of like,
not really.
It's kind of like the way I explain it is I'm like, okay, I used to try that and I thought it worked. But really what's happening is we're like,
there's a lot of security in that though.
So much security.
For a lot of people.
And it does, I'm not saying it doesn't help some,
right? But
it's like this. We learned these beliefs when we were younger, right? It's like learning to ride a bike. We can come along at the age of 42 and I can say, I choose to no longer know how to ride a bike, right? Like I do not know how to ride a bike. And I can will myself to never ride a bike again, but it's not the same. The programming is still in there. So when push comes to shove, if I had to run for my life or get away, I would know how to ride a bike and I would do it, you know? Sure. And that's what happens with these beliefs, is that we get pushed up against a wall and that fear triggers this old stuff. And then it's an automatic response from that deeper programming, and it overrides the will, right? Eventually we break down and it's like, no, actually I do still remember how to ride a bike, right?
Yeah.
And, maybe there's some way to undo that, but that's the analogy I use,
I don't know that you could forget to ride a bike.
I know. That makes me sad. I bet you could with hypnosis. Maybe not forget, but I don't know. That's interesting.
I've ridden my bike a lot, so I don't think that's a possibility.
No, you're not going to forget.
Yeah, right now I'm pretty sure I can't forget how either.
But I guess my point being it's the automatic physical response. Oh, yeah. And the mind can say,
sure.
The analogy's great.
Mind can say, oh yeah, I don't know how to ride a bike, and we can never ride a bike again.
Right.
But it's still in there. We got to find ways to get in there and really shift at a deeper level.
Absolutely.
So one thing I struggle with when we were telling our story is if somebody finds themselves in that situation, what would you recommend they do?
Which situation?
Just kind of what you were just talking about, kind of willing yourself to be positive and but knowing that you were in a spot that you weren't supposed to be.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would recommend people do is recognize that there is a deeper programming going on here. Our bodies are designed to hold on to that old stuff. You're not doing it wrong. It's just that programming is still locked in there. And I would recommend trying to not do it on your own. Yeah. I think this is help. I think this is where we need support. And I did a lot of healing work on my own first. And I think it was part of the way I needed to do that journey. It was part of my empowerment. However, there was a point when it's really hard to see the really stuck stuff. It's really hard to see the junk, because our mind put it there to try to keep us safe. So it's kind of trying to hide it from us a lot of times too. So I think when it comes to really stuck patterns, and if we have been trying to, do the personal development work by ourselves, it's time to reach out and find support, either a community or an individual to work with, and have them see your shit from the outside and open yourself up to some support. Because it's not easy for a lot of people.
They can see, and even not lead you down the path, but ask questions for you to find that on your own.
Right. That's a really important distinction.
Just by being removed from the situation and not being caught up in it, it's a lot clearer. And you'll be able to see it clear once you travel through that. A lot of times looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. But when you're smack dab in the middle of it, there's just things that it's not possible for you to see.
It's not. And I know for me personally that I can do a certain level of healing on my own, by myself. I can have a big release. I can feel a lot better. But if I can tell that there's still something holding on, if I tell that same story to someone else, especially if it's my coach or, somebody that I'm working with, it takes that healing to a whole nother level, because I think they can hold the container for you. And I think part of my wounding was around, I'm all alone. Nobody feels like this. I need to hide this stuff inside, which, when you can give it to someone else and they feel trustworthy to hold the space for you, that all by itself is such a healing experience and takes it 1,000 times deeper. So I know that that's part of my thing. And I always recommend something. I'm like, okay, if you think you're done with it, tell the same story, tell that thing to someone else, and you'll probably get a whole nother wave of emotion.
Well, and you talking about totally feeling like you were alone on it, and by sharing it and speaking it out loud, it takes some of that pressure off of yourself and it shares it with someone else.
I agree.
And suddenly you're not alone anymore. Someone else knows the same story or can share their story as well.
Yeah.
But it just takes some of the negative power, I think, from it.
I think so too. And I think it took me a couple of years to feel safe enough to work with somebody else. And I was shocked, looking back on it, I didn't realize I had resistance to that. But now I can see very clearly that there was trust issues with, I think in the past I'd had people say, oh, especially adults when I was a kid, oh, I know things are hard. Tell me what's going on. And then I would tell them, and then they would come back with, well, things are really hard for your parents right now. And, you just need to be strong and get your shit together. And to me, I need to tap on that still, because I think that really wounded me. I mean, the message I received from that was, oh, their struggles are more important than mine. Those adults really weren't holding the space for me. They just wanted to tell me all the reasons I needed to keep my stuff inside and have compassion for my parents, which, yes, is important, but, we have our own side of it, too.
Which is also why you're in college and you still think you're totally fine, even though all of these things were going on.
Exactly. Definitely. Yeah, I just had to convince myself, like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just going to be okay, and I'm going to be strong for everybody, and, I'm not going to let myself be too emotional or have any issues. And so that was a lot of my, learning to hide and be small and, don't shine too brightly, don't say too much, don't be too loud, blah, 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 all the things. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I don't struggle with that as much, I guess, is what I would say.
That's good.
You've tapped through some of that.
I've tapped through some of that. It still comes up, even just doing this podcast that I'm doing, we've talked about Brandy. It's kind of the next layer of it's coming up again. The kind of oh, am I being too loud? Am I saying too much?
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to plug your podcast. Go ahead and put it out there. Kelly just started her own podcast a month ago. Little more.
Yeah.
You've been working on it forever.
I have been working on it forever. I don't do anything the way I'm, quote, supposed to. I released, I think, 4 episodes all at once, and then another couple, a couple weeks later. So yeah, I think it's been about a month. It's called the Manifestation Lab. And really I think my passion is I love transformation, and I want to know as much as I can about the science of it. And I'm also totally willing to go way beyond what science can explain, because I think everything exists before science can explain it. And, into intuition and connecting with God, source, universe, whatever the word is. And so I think I'd like to think interesting conversations about that transformation process and, people's stories, just like we've talked about today, of doing the epic shit and moving through the fear and following the calling, whatever's wanting to express through you.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we were at 2008 because I wanted people to hear your courageous epic shit.
I took us.
I think I got off track.
That's a great dive, but I want people to hear your
Good for you keeping us on track, Jed.
He's great at that.
That's awesome. You guys are very good at this,
I'm all
by the
over
way.
the place.
I feel like you guys have been doing this for your whole life.
We've been working on shit for a while.
Yeah.
But you're in 2008. Your life's good, but it's not that good.
Yeah. My body was not happy.
Where are you going?
So I should back up a little bit and say that I had, speaking of my body not being happy, one of the earliest signs that my stress had gotten out of control was really bad IBS that I had been dealing with since high school. In fact, my darling husband, I think we were on our first date, and I ate dinner and I was like, and I had to run to the bathroom like 3 times. And so I basically had to tell him that I had to poop every 5 seconds because I thought, well, I don't want him to think I'm throwing up. I would rather him know that I'm having diarrhea.
Right.
But yeah, it showed up very much.
He's still with you.
He's still with me. He was like, I'm hooked. That girl is so hot. She's the best.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I just drew him in with the IBS.
We were laughing. I had to leave in the middle of the podcast the other day because that's my.
Did you tell your listeners?
That's my stress. I am now, but we were laughing about it because I just quietly I'm looking at him like,
gotta go. I don't have a choice.
And I was like right in the middle of like talking, and she's like trying to like signal me to turn it off.
I couldn't. I just bolted.
Get out of here. So I completely just rambled for a while. I have no idea what I said.
That's
and
perfect.
then she shut back up.
It's perfect.
It all worked out.
Yeah. We were at a baseball game a couple of weeks ago, and the poor ump out there all of a sudden had to go to the bathroom in the middle of a game. So we had to hustle. I know. I was like, oh, baby, I feel you. Yeah. I've been there. Anyway, back to 2008. So IBS, that took a turn, didn't it?
Everybody poops.
Everybody poops. I was pooping a lot, frequently. And that was just getting worse. So I was having a lot of gut issues. I mentioned being nauseous and stuff, but ultimately I really got broken down to a point where I knew that I needed to do something different professionally. I wasn't, I could just tell. I love being a nurse in so many ways, but I could just tell there was like something else that I was supposed to move into next. I had no idea what that was going to be. That terrified me. Spent all that money on nursing school, and I think I'd been a nurse, I don't know, it was 2008. I'd only been a nurse for a few years. So I was like, oh my God, my husband's going to kill me. He going to kill me dead if I start telling him that I don't want to do this anymore. But it started out as that like very quiet, thinking about it, not really telling him, just having the thoughts, getting curious about it. And I really just got broken down to the point one night where I had a true surrender moment, and Chris was asleep and I was laying there in the dark and I just burst into tears. And I didn't expect that to choke me up, but I burst into tears, and I remember going, okay, if there's a God, universe, whatever, if there's something out there, I need something else, I will pay attention to anything. And I basically just laid it all out there, and I felt that true, and I really will do whatever, fully open, right, fully surrendered to whatever was next. And it was, I don't know, maybe a couple of days after that I saw, I loved Ellen DeGeneres. I still do. And Wayne Dyer was on Ellen. Are you guys familiar with Wayne Dyer?
I'm not.
He's a very, you guys would love his work. He was a very popular, he actually died the day after my dad, which is a whole different story. But I would say that he was the first spiritual author that really I paid attention to, because he was on Ellen. He was the person that married them. But the way he was speaking just woke something up inside of me. And I wanted more. I was like, what is this? It was like he was saying things that I had always felt were true, and I'd never heard anyone else speak. And I wanted to know more. He had released a book. I think at that point it was called The Shift. I think he had a movie that went along with it. And I got on this Hay House, which is a publishing company. I got on their email list because of Wayne Dyer. And so I started getting all these emails from Hay House, and I ended up getting an email about tapping from Nick Ortner and the tapping solution, because it had just been launched. And I started getting emails, and it was only a few days after that surrender, maybe a week, I don't remember exactly, but it was really close. So I remembered, and I started getting these emails about healing your anxiety. And I still was kind of I don't know if this is anxiety, I don't know. But then the emails started talking about fixing physical ailments with this tapping. And that was when it really started to perk me up, because I'm like, okay, wait, they're saying that this can actually help physical things too. I mean, I'm not sure I have anxiety.
I'm fine.
Because I'm fine, but my body is really waking out here. And I remember looking at the email and kind of rolling my eyes. And then I was like, ooh, I remembered my surrender moment. And I was like, dang it, I got to try this. I got to try this, because I swore that I would. and I wanted to feel better. And the first tapping that I did was on a video through the tapping solution. And it feels ridiculous. You guys can attest to this. The first time you do it or the first few times you do it, it feels really weird because you're literally tapping on the top of your head, tapping on different points of your face.
I would have never said that, but now that you say that, I totally agree.
100%. I know. I mean, I try to just throw that out there when I have new clients. I'm like, this is going to feel weird at first. Just go with it. Like, trust me on this, you know?
Right. Oh, my favorite question is just on the same one. People are like, well, does Kelly tap on you?
Oh,
or
yeah,
do
no.
you tap on yourself?
That's a good question.
No, you tap on yourself.
Some practitioners do. I actually learned a long time ago, I want this to be empowering. I want people to take this with them. This is not me healing you. This is you learning to do this on your own. And, you know, it's just an empowering feeling to be like, I did that. Yeah. You know, I tapped on my body and I looked real weird, but it worked. But I did this video and I remember it just felt really awkward. And I, honest to God, thought, I was like, oh my God, Ellen, this is like one of her candid camera things. And I was like, I'm going to be the dumbass on her show. And they're like, oh, these people thought this was real, you know? And like all these videos of people tapping on themselves. I really did. I was like, oh my gosh, this cannot be right. But I did it. And I mean, within, I think 1 or 2 rounds, I actually felt from my head all the way down to my toes, a full body like relaxation. And I remember just pausing and being like, okay. And then of course my mind was like, well, that has to be placebo effect. They convinced me that it works and it's got to be placebo. So, I mean, along those lines, if anybody's wondering, yeah, there is a placebo effect. There's a placebo effect with anything that we do. If we believe that it's going to work, it's even more powerful. But tapping works far beyond placebo. You know, it's in studies it goes way beyond that. So it's pretty
science to back up.
Pretty scientifically sound. Very, in fact, recent studies are showing that it is far more effective for most things than CBT, even cognitive behavioral therapy. And it works much faster. Yeah, much faster.
That's awesome.
Now, EMDR and tapping are pretty close, nose to nose.
What is the difference? I don't know.
I don't know EMDR very well. It's a rapid eye movement desensitization process. A lot of it is similar to tapping in the way that you're looking for the root cause, and then you're basically shifting and rolling your eyes in different directions. And I think it works in the same way as tapping does to kind of distract from the regular neural pathway that's been laid down and kind of break it loose so you can create a new one.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There's an extended protocol of tapping that actually does include some eye rolling stuff. And I don't use it very often, but it is super effective. So if I ever get somebody who's really, really stuck, I'll throw that in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember where I was.
So you didn't show up on the Ellen shows.
Oh, I didn't. No. Yeah. I felt at work. And the next thing I tried was tapping on, because I mentioned my hands would shake on the way to work. And I tapped and focused on that shaking in my hands, like before I went to work, and didn't even work on an emotional side of it. I was just focusing on my hands shaking. And the next time I drove to work, they were steady. And that, I think that was the real moment when I was like, okay, there is something legit going on here. And that just launched me on a path where I had to learn everything I could. I bought every book. I decided I was going to start trying these different things that were in this book. And I literally was tapping like in the closet, didn't even tell Chris about it for a long time, didn't tell my family members about it. And I remember starting to tell people about it and getting very mixed reviews, mostly like, what are you talking about?
Kelly's lost her mind.
Yeah.
All right. So this was also 2008, or is this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was kind of a span of time between like late 2008. I definitely feel like 2010, after Chris's mom passed away, I ramped up my tapping some. I was pregnant with Grayson. That was when I think I like piddled with it for a couple of years and kind of knew it was out there. And then in 2010 was when I really got interested in like, I want to do this. I think I want to do this professionally. I think it was 2010 or 11 when I started going to Chicago for training through EFT Universe, and just started practicing on people. Anybody that was curious enough, as I would talk about it, like, hey, can I practice on you? Do you want to try this? And people mostly like, no.
Yeah, that's weird.
No, I do not. You're insane. But gradually over time, I did get some people to try it out and went through my training. And
what all did you do for your training?
Yeah, so I went to Chicago, as I mentioned, and there was a level 1 and a level 2 course. Both of them were 2-day long, like full day experiences. And it's kind of a combination of learning the science behind tapping and also trying it out with another person at these workshops. So I think that was really my first experience, like trusting somebody to do it with me.
Mm-hmm.
And and they just go deeper and deeper in level 1 and level 2. And then you have to repeat your level 1. You have to do 50 case studies and work with a mentor. I was kind of above and beyond, and I repeated level 1 and level 2 like 4 other times, just with different teachers, just so I could learn from them, which was absolutely the best experience because everybody does it a little bit differently. And
Right.
yeah, I learned so much. Everybody has these little nuances. But I was able to go and be an assistant for a couple of people that are pretty well known in the EFT world, one of them being Dawson Church, who does a ton of research on tapping and the epigenetics behind what's changing inside of us as we start to release these things and reset our nervous system. So I did a level 1 and level 2 in Minneapolis and Kansas City and Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin, just kind of all over the place. I once I got my case studies done, I set up shop and slowly started working with clients, and it's just kind of built momentum through the years.
When did you take your first client?
Oh, God.
Approximately.
Ooh.
Jed's a date guy, if you can't tell.
I know, and my brain doesn't work like that. I struggle.
I
can't even tell what time it was today.
I know. Well, I kind of go off like, what kid was I pregnant with?
I know.
Or what house do we live in?
There was kind of a fuzzy
I don't have
period
a
between like practicing with people and opening my business. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of, it was not a very distinct thing. So I would guess, I don't know. What do you guys think? 2000.
Well, Gray was born in 10.
I would say my business, after my dad passed away in 2015, I got very serious about my business.
Yeah.
But I had truly been in business for probably 3 or 4 years before that.
Do you think your dad was the catalyst to like really kick that off?
Yeah, that's a great question because my dad was a huge teacher for me. He was very into mystical happenings, and he was a deep thinker and would talk to me about energy. My dad had a past life experience when I was about 10. He had struggled with drug addiction and alcoholism, and he had a true, out-of-body experience. Did I say past life? I meant out-of-body. Yeah, he took too much of something or the wrong something and died for a little bit and came out of his body and looked down and saw the people around him trying to wake him up. And he had a conversation with God and had a true classical out-of-body experience, near-death experience, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And he came back a completely changed man. And he said that in that experience, he was given the choice to stay or go. And he said that he thought of his daughters and he was instantly back in his body.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
I don't know
really.
that I did either.
Yeah. So that was really, prior to that, my dad, he wasn't living a spiritual life at all, I would say. I think it was in there deeply, but it was covered up with drugs and alcohol and trauma and all kinds of things. And after that experience, he just dove in deeply into learning about spirituality and meditating. And those conversations started happening between he and I. And that was amazing for me at 10 years old to start hearing about this because something inside of me remembered that was true. That lit me up. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Well, and maybe even to open the door for this later.
Oh, I think so.
In preparation for what you were supposed to do.
Yeah. So I would say definitely he led me on this path that way. He gave me the book called Vibrational Medicine when I was, I think, in high school, which is an amazing book. Even now, like all these years later, you read it and it's like, oh yeah, they were already talking about energy healing and things. So in that way, he definitely sent me on this path or helped me realize that it lit me up and excited me. And then also I had a lot of trauma behind my experience with him. He moved He moved to Florida when I was, I think, 4 after my mom and dad got divorced. And there was a lot of, old stuck stuff that I had to uncover and find with him. And so he kind of helped me out in that way. And then, after he passed, I feel like my intuition just really got in touch, much stronger. And I continue to have a great connection with him now. And I think he's, I don't know that he's like an official guide or whatever, but
I think he is.
But he's around. I think he's something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. He's around a lot, and I have a great connection with him still.
Oh no, I think he's for sure a guide.
I remember your dad was sick and took him down to the river house. And we hung out for an afternoon. He definitely had a much larger perspective on the spiritual world than I think was even socially acceptable. But he definitely thought further behind what was right in front of you, for sure. Yeah,
he says that when he had that near-death experience, it was, and I've read books and heard other people say the same thing, that it's like suddenly you know everything. It's like all the information in the universe is all known at once. Mm-hmm. And he said when he came back, it was actually really frustrating because he
knew it was there.
He remembered a lot of it, but you can't, I don't think we can contain all that. I don't think we could possibly comprehend all of that.
No.
Can't process it.
Not in this form.
Yeah. But he said it was really frustrating, but he was changed. And you hear those stories over and over again, It's like you can't unsee what you see. You can't unknow what you know.
Right.
And you can't go back to business as usual. So for him, it helped him break out of his addictions. And he still struggled here and there through the years, but that was a big turning point for him throughout the years.
How old were you when that happened?
I think I was 10.
10.
Yeah. To my best estimate, I think I was about 10 years old. Yeah, maybe 11. But yeah. And I really felt like, honestly, that was the first time I felt, other than probably when I was very, very little, a real connection with him. When we were able to start those conversations and start talking about energy and what that was, and what's beyond what we can see and how that's affecting us, and meditation and things like that. And I learned a lot from him. I continue to, actually.
Right.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So your dad passed, and then you finally got you went into it.
Yeah, I had more time because I was his primary caregiver. And after a long battle with cancer, I was doing a lot for him physically, but emotionally, I was just, kind of tapped out at that point too. And what's funny is that I really wanted some time. I needed some time to sort of make space after he passed. But it was like after he was gone, all these things started lining up. And I did take time, but there was a lot of really interesting synchronicities, and my business sort of just kind of like, being in the right place at the right time with the right person, and then referrals just exploding. It was like I made, I had space after he was gone. And again, I think he's on the other side helping me. And he has always been a huge advocate for this work, and for getting me, encouraging me to do that. I would say from the beginning, where I don't feel like I got that from a lot of people, and I completely don't blame them.
I think I was on that boat.
Honestly,
we had some minutes where I'm like, what is she talking about?
I know. It's okay.
I was a little slower on the curve.
But because I had that experience, when people come to me and they're like, I want to do this thing, I'm like, do it anyway. Right. Even if people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Fucking do it. Because just because people don't understand doesn't mean that you're wrong.
Right.
You know your alignment. You know that calling. Nobody else can know that. Nobody else can feel what you're going through. And because I've walked that path and continue, I can with absolute certainty say, do it. Do it.
And that's why, that's another reason we wanted you on here, is because that's one thing we encourage, is be courageous enough to follow that little calling, that inkling, that thing that you're supposed to do, and everybody tells you not to. Do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
What'd you call the alignment?
Alignment.
When all the things aligned?
Yeah. Oh, synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that several times.
Yeah.
Right.
Just stuff synchronized, and it was pretty awesome.
There's no such thing as coincidence.
No,
it's finally the time has come, and everything can line up the way it needs to be for it to happen if you're willing to do it.
Yeah. And it's so important because there's so many points on this path where I would get an idea And the idea would keep coming to me, and it would keep coming to me. The podcast is one of those ideas. And I know you guys have gone through this as well. Where like inside you're like, I don't want to do that. Or why would I do that? Or what's the point behind that? But the idea keeps coming and it keeps coming and it won't go away. And we keep trying to talk ourselves out of it. Right. And then if we can finally just go, okay, I'm going to try it. That's when those synchronicities I feel like are like ding, 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 ding. And things start to line up so quickly and easily. And, one of the examples of this was when I really was getting my business going and these things were starting to line up, I kept having this idea to do little workshops at people's houses. You know, it was like just however many people they could pull together. It was like $20 a person. Like I would go to their house and do like a 2-hour workshop and then just stand there. I remember
some of those.
Yeah, I would just stand there and like answer questions afterwards. They were so fun. But in my mind, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to like create the path. This is what I'm going to do. Like I kept seeing it as like a long-term vision sort of thing. But once I started letting myself do it, I dropped it and my mind other ideas started coming in. And what I realize now is that I was supposed to do that. I did probably like 6 of them. That was all I needed to do. I got in front of the right people. Those people came in as clients and then they started referring like crazy. So I did need to do that. But once I had done that, Spirit led me in a different direction. And then I had other ideas. And so it's like, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is how my business is going to go. This is going to be part of my model. But I have never operated well from that place because I will do it. And it's like, it serves its purpose. And then I'm instantly led in a different.
Time to move on.
And then it's time to move on, which is irritating a lot of times because I'm like, why can't I be like other people and just like do a thing for a while, you know?
That's so funny.
Oh,
tell me.
Jed was just saying like how he's sometimes envious of the people that can have a job and just stay with it. Like that brings them joy, the routine.
Yeah.
And
I don't have that bone in my body.
Right?
No,
Same.
not at all.
Same.
Yeah. The second you get settled into something, it's like something new comes along. You're like, oh my God, no, we have to do that.
And I think we're designed, you know, like our soul wants us to do that.
Right.
We're being led in that direction on purpose. And we want like, I think there sometimes can be a decent amount of self-loathing around that for people like us that are just, you know, we're like, but I'm not happy. Like, why can't I do that? I'm like, I hate myself. Why can't I do that? I mean, I don't really anymore because I understand it. But looking back, there was so much like, what's wrong with me? I just went through that last year, like fighting this big transition that I'm in now. Kind of like, but can't I just, I've worked so hard through these years to build this practice and get it to this place. Can't I just like enjoy
here
this
for a little bit,
for a few years? And my guys were like, no,
time to move on.
You could, but you're not going to be happy, you know? And
right.
I was like, okay. So,
and that's something we talk about too with your epic shit. Like it changes. I mean, if you're really paying attention, you go through these different seasons of your life and these different phases and you learn more, but that sends you on another journey that you didn't even know right now. You couldn't comprehend that was going to be your future or part of it.
Never.
And being willing to accept that and run with it anyways is
well, I love that you guys are having
kind of
people
crazy
on,
and cool.
And you guys follow that path and I'm following that path and you're talking to people doing that. Cause I think that does give them the courage to go, okay, this really does work for people. Like the people in my
That's the ultimate courageous to me.
Yeah.
Like following that instinct.
I totally agree. I completely agree. And it's like exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time for me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you just talking about that gives me goosebumps because it's like, it's gone on several times in my life. It's going on now. And it's just like, you think of like the Leadville 100, how stupid, crazy, like, why would you do that? But how many relationships and different things that it's opened up for us.
Oh, it's changed our lives.
Now, I mean, it's cool. Like there's so many, like you just get aware of things and get certain people in front of you that take you a different direction or whatever. But just being, I think, in a place where you can be aware enough to recognize those things. What I was talking about last time was just, I think everybody's so freaking busy. There's just this epidemic of busyness and people going here and there and just creating a little bit of margin in your life so you can
we've also talked about the lack of awareness that you have a choice. I mean, a lot of us, you get in the nursing job and you did work so hard to be there.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why would you change that? People don't understand that it is an option, that if that is no longer fulfilling you, change it.
Right. You do have a choice.
And I mean, a
Always.
lot of times, and especially in this situation, you don't realize you have that. And
Yeah.
or you're afraid of it or whatever it may be. And I mean, it was the same with Jed when he sold land care. It was, I mean, you have this great thing and you've worked really hard to get where you are. But if it's not fulfilling anymore, then where are you supposed to be going? And actually realizing that you have the choice to leave and do that is super scary. And I think most people don't even realize.
It is. And I always like to remind people too that our state of being and how we feel inside is always creating chemistry. And that's either creating chemistry that is building us up and making us healthier, or it's creating chemistry that's creating inflammation and taking us down. And when we're unfulfilled and we're bored and we're stressed, and not to say that we're ever going to get rid of stress, we're not meant to, it's part of the experience here, but if we're stuck in mundane, even boredom, you're not utilizing that chemistry to make yourself better and healthier and more vibrant. And, you know, if we're not healthy and energetic and vibrant for ourselves, then we can't show up like that for the people around us in the same way.
Yes. Yeah.
So
you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the people that you love and the people that you do life with. And what a better way to give back.
And what a beautiful thing that you guys and I am modeling to our children, right? To be like, you can do life like this. You really, really can, you know?
Think outside the box. Absolutely.
Build your own damn box.
Yes. We've been talking about paths lately. Sorry. Like,
I'm putting us back on track.
Are we
here.
off track,
You're
Jed?
no, you're not off track. But I'm curious so your dad died, you got serious about your business, you started getting referrals. So where are you today? Like, are you taking anybody else on? Are you that busy or like?
So I am.
What's your
I have a wait
MO?
list. I have a wait list. I'm right now. I'm really being called to step away from my one-to-one sessions. I don't think completely, but to back away to make space for creating a community of people, like some sort of transformational community. I'm still sort of gathering what exactly that's going to look like. The podcast is part of that. And what I see it being is like a community that comes together, and every month we have a different theme, because even though we're all on different paths, we all are facing fear. We're all looking to find courage. We're all trying to find these things that are stuck, these old beliefs. And so each month there'll be sort of a theme behind it with maybe a meditation, tapping meditation that they can do daily, and then a deeper dive into the healing work as a community. And yeah, that's really where I'm being called right now. And I don't really know beyond that, but I
think it's a good place to
that
start.
Don't know you. I mean, you're a devoted wife. You're a mother of 3 boys. You're busy as hell with sports, and doing all this stuff to the point where like you're as busy as you want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And you took, the step to be courageous and follow that passion. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's totally possible that once I get my community going, I go back to doing more one-to-one sessions. But I just know right now that's where they're like, get this together.
Work on this.
And then we'll give you the next step, And like I said, I'm not stopping those, but I do have a wait list. And I am right now kind of contemplating probably starting an application process so that I can work with the right people and then refer out to some of my partners, some of the people that I connect with.
So you can get partnered with the people that are going to be most beneficial together, both as healer and...
I think that is probably the most important thing, is to make sure, I don't care what healing modality or therapist or doctor or whoever you're working with.
And that applies to anything. Business.
And just
having
make sure they
ideal
resonate.
Client funnel.
Right? Yeah. They resonate and they feel like a safe person.
And don't feel like you have to stick with the first person you go to or somebody else loved them, so you should too. Screw that. Go to as many as you need to go to figure out.
Yeah, and tapping might not be their thing, right? Like, but do other things. Try Reiki, try EMDR, try somatic experiencing. There's so many things out there to try.
Right.
I'm obsessed with tapping because it worked for me and it works for the people that find their way to me.
Yeah.
But it may not work for everybody, and that doesn't mean to stop, right? Like, try something else. That's part of your journey. But
you're
definitely-
trying to get better. So
Yeah.
that in itself is wonderful. So find what it takes
Yeah, but
for you
keep
to
going.
do that.
I think sometimes people try something and it's like it's not the end all be all, and like suddenly they turn into a unicorn. And it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
No, not usually.
Yeah. And but I would find someone that feels safe. And if they don't feel safe, move on.
Yep.
Keep going.
Yep. And that's something we bring up too. Find people around you that are going to build you up and encourage you on doing this. I mean,
Yes.
like if you've got people that are telling you, you don't need that help or you don't need this, ditch them.
Hey, what sort of
it's
resistance
okay.
did you get as you were building? Like, what did you fight
Like
through?
internally or from people outside? I mean, both. Yeah. Well, I have a lot of voices inside still that come up, when I do new things that say, oh, you don't have what it takes for that, So I would say the inner critic that comes up or just raw fear for me. And that fear shows up a lot of times my mind is like, yes, let's do this. And then my body's like, oh, hell no. No.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that most of the time is inner child programming,
Right.
because the adult me wants to do it. And the programming that's in there from when I was, 5, 6, 7, 10 years old is like, no, if you put yourself out there like that, people are going to fucking hate you.
Right.
And so I would say that voice still comes up for me when I do new things. The resistance, as I work through my own inner voices and doubt and things like that, people do show up around me that will say things like, well, why would you do that? I mean, are you sure? Are you sure that's a good idea? And Brene Brown was talking about this the other day, and I thought this was perfect. But she calls them the candle blower outers. Like the people.
I call them the life suckers.
Life suckers, yeah.
Yeah.
But she said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is what they're doing. But you're like, oh my God, I'm starting this podcast. I'm super excited about it. And then somebody comes along like,
And they
They
just sprinkle shit all over.
and they're like, oh, that's interesting. Or why are you doing that? You know what I mean? Like just the people that was like, you can tell, even if they say they're happy for you, there's a different energy there. And it's like, you just
Right.
feel them trying to like blow your energy out.
Yeah.
So I thought that was brilliant. But yeah, you end up with those. And I'm much more adept at seeing those and identifying those kinds of people now. And to be honest with you, I just choose people that build me up. And that would be my recommendation. Just like you said, Brandy, like find the people that feel like sunshine and do more of that.
Right.
And if you feel like you don't have them, you may not. And that's okay, but they are out there and you will find them, but you have to do things differently. You just have to start showing up differently in the world, and then those people will show up to mirror that back to you.
Yep.
We've
They will.
experienced that.
100% of the time. And I didn't believe that all those years ago, but I 100% do now. That shift your own energy and, get curious about who's out there that would be a good friend that would build you up, and they will show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why the synchronicities and the no coincidences, if you start believing and feeling that, all of a sudden everything starts aligning.
It does. Just open yourself up to it and pay attention. And again, if somebody is skeptical and they're, they feel like that seems a little too woo-woo, I go, you know what? Curiosity and excitement is so much better for your physical well-being. Again, going back to that chemistry, there's a different chemistry that feels good and is going to build you up physically if you let yourself be in excitement and joy and curiosity. Mm-hmm. So let yourself have magical thinking, even if you think it's crazy.
Right.
And
It's
then
not
see
gonna
what
hurt
shows
anything.
up. And then you're going to be like, oh, they were right about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I have a big analytical part of my mind, and I think to your question with resistance, that analytical part shows up. So I like to be able to explain things in the very grounded physical experience kind of way, and the energetics and things that we don't totally have figured out yet, because I can relate to those people that are out there like, I want to believe this, but.
Well, and I think the further we get and the more that you learn, it all works together. It's not like you have to believe one or the other. Mm-hmm. It's not, all of this that we're talking about, energy and spirit and the physical well-being and all of those things, it's all intertwined.
It is all intertwined.
All of it's the same. You don't have to choose this over this. I mean, it's all working
and
together.
Interestingly, the deeper we go into quantum physics and things, I feel like all the woo-woo stuff just ends up getting proven over and over again anyway.
Yeah.
So,
You were just ahead of the curve.
well, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out, but it's like I keep reading these studies and I'm like, wow, that really is true. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's
That
the
is
reasoning
cool.
behind it.
Yeah, it is.
Well, cool. Is there anything else you want to throw out there, how we can find you?
Yeah.
Or if people want to follow you, you know, with what's coming up and different gatherings, monthly get-togethers and that kind of thing?
Definitely.
Support groups?
So I would say the best place to follow me is probably on Instagram. I am still on Facebook, but I would say it's just like a little too overstimulating for me. There's something energetically when I get on it that just doesn't feel
I agree.
life-giving.
Yeah. No.
I'm on there, but mostly it's like because my Instagram is connected to my Facebook, and I'm fully aware that they are the same business, but there's something about the setup of it
Yes.
that is, like I said, less overstimulating for me. So Kelly Howe Coaching on Instagram, and I have an event that I do called the Energy Enlightenment Tour with Brittany Buckwalter and Chantel Renee. I would say we are looking at the fall maybe to do another one of those, which is a fun full day of just learning about energy and tapping and hypnosis and all kinds of fun stuff.
Is this the same, Brittany?
This is Brittany.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a funny story, Kelly, and this was when I was still maybe a little bit more on the fence about this. I was coming around.
Yeah, we do need to tell this.
We ended up going, Brittany is a great evidential medium.
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so she is fantastic. She converses with the other side in her own way and gives very good evidence from anyone around you who has passed on, that type of thing. And she'll bring you messages, and it's usually hysterical. I mean, and very touching. It depends on who's
she has
passed
a
on.
way of making it, I mean, it's very serious.
Right.
But she does have a playfulness to her.
Yes.
And I think the spirits that come through her know that.
Yeah, which is why Ross showed up. So my brother passed away when he was 22 in a car accident. We've talked about this before. It's a little bit of my story, and I've had to tap and heal through some fear on that and everything. But so I joined Kelly, and we end up going to see Brittany, and I was like crazy nervous. This is still like, it's a medium. I don't know about all this stuff. And so my palms are sweating, and I sit through, and there's like a whole room. She goes through everybody else, and she's like, okay, there's one person left. And so she starts giving some info, and it was me. I was kind of hiding, and I knew. So Ross waited till the very end.
And she gave very specific things about
as to how he died and different things. Like, she was right on. There was no question in my mind.
No,
I think in any of our minds.
So obvious,
right? That it was my brother. But Kelly's sitting right next to me, and it was so great because my brother had the biggest crush on you with good reason. God love him. I mean, he was four years younger than you, but you were like the hottest thing in the world. He would hang out with you all day long. So it was kind of an ongoing joke, but he knew he was kind of a skinny guy. He was never going to be able to take Chris.
Gosh.
So, but anyway, so Brittany is sitting there.
That is true.
And true. Yeah, never would have. But Brittany's sitting there, and she you could tell she's a little flustered almost, that she didn't know if she should say this out loud or not. She goes, I just keep getting MILF. MILF. And we lose it. I mean, we're cracking up because I know exactly who he's talking about. So, but anyway, so this is Brittany.
And did she mention, like, did she say, I feel like it has something to do with, or like, did we just know? I don't remember.
No, she connected it to you.
I feel like she did connect it to me
She
somehow.
100%.
Like, she was like, I feel like it has something to do with you. And like,
Yes.
she pointed to me. I did not know her yet.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
I didn't know her. Actually, can I tell the story?
Please.
Because there's synchronicities that lined up with this that are so crazy that actually got me to that mediumship event. Talking about like getting the ideas, like I'm supposed to do this thing. I'm supposed to do this thing. Well, I had this idea to do this like kind of movie day where I showed different documentaries about, tapping or other healing things. And so again, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this thing. There used to be a place here in town called the Hatchery, and you could rent the space. And again, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this like twice a month. I'm going to show a different documentary. Like, it's going to be a thing I do for a long time. Well, I did it once, and then I was setting up the second one, and I kept trying to go onto the hatchery's calendar and book the time for the conference room. And I figured out the perfect date. And I was like, okay, that date will work perfectly. I will, let me look and make sure. And I get on the hatchery calendar and the date's open. So I'm like, okay, that's perfect. I could not make myself book that time. I couldn't. I was like, I don't know why. And I couldn't, I was like, even kind of like trying to figure out why am I resisting this? Why can't I book that time? Why can't I? Well, it turns out I get on Facebook and somebody had just posted a thing for a mediumship event. And I love that shit. So a mediumship event with Brittany Buckwalter. I'd never heard of her. And it says, and she'll be at the hatchery at this date at this time, which is the exact time and date that I was trying to book. I could have booked it. The time was open, but I didn't book it. They had forgotten to block the time off, which was why my guides were like, no, girl, don't do it. Don't do it. But so I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I think once I saw her ad and I was like, ooh, I'm really excited. I looked up and it was 444 and I was like, okay. And I'm very into signs through numbers. And I was like, I'm gonna check this chick out. So I pop over to her Facebook page and she had just posted about the number 444. Are you freaking kidding me? And I was like, okay, message received.
I'm going.
So I drag you along kicking and screaming because you were not as into this stuff.
Right. I was still a little hesitant.
Yeah. You were like, you don't know. I was like, it's fine. So you came along and got obviously the most amazing reading with Ross. And then I introduced myself afterwards and there was like some kind of energy with her that I don't feel with a lot of people. And I instantly was like, I want to reach out to this girl. Like I couldn't explain it, but I was like, I wanted more.
Right.
And I just kept getting this message. I was like, no, just wait. And she reached out to me like 3 or 4 days later and she was like, hey, I don't do this very often, but
right.
And it just started a conversation between us and we've since been just the most amazing friends. So,
and you've had how many energy enlightenment tours have you guys done? Because I know COVID made it hard for a little bit.
I think we've done 4 or 5 of them, but we did one last year and it was amazing. But yeah, scheduling's been really hard. And, it seemed like things were getting better for a while. It seemed like things were opening up and then we scheduled another one and then like everything locked down again. So after that, we were kind of like, all right, we're going to back away from this for a little bit. But hopefully we'll get one scheduled for this fall. We're going to do a repeat event from what we've done in the past. And then after that, we're going to move on to more advanced content and do kind of a 2.0 version. So that's exciting. That's awesome. Yeah. So if that sounds interesting, definitely keep an eye on my Instagram page. And like I said, my Facebook page too, but it's just all coming from Instagram.
Well, and you post a lot of both on your story and then you post a lot with just some very helpful tidbits here and there, different things, the way the planets are aligning. Like you're great about putting information out there and all inspirational and fun and uplifting. So it's a great way to follow along. You said
that, I would just like to put a plug for make Instagram your vision board. If you see things people are posting and you don't like it, and if it's not exciting you, you have a choice. Change it.
Don't follow
because that feed can be whatever you want it to be. You can follow all the people that are uplifting and make you feel great and enlightening,
Or you can follow the ones that don't.
Or you can follow the turds.
Yeah.
You have a choice.
You have a choice. There's always a choice.
You'll hear that a lot on this podcast.
Right. I love it.
No kidding. Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
What a fun new experience.
Can we do this once a week? This was fun.
We should do this more often. Maybe we'll get some wine out one night and just sit here and have conversation. See where that goes.
We'll get Chris on here too.
Oh my God. Yes. We got to get Chris Howe on here.
That'd
the brute.
Fun.
We gotta get the brute on here.
The brute's funny.
Yeah. I'm planning to get him on the manifestation lab as well.
Okay.
Just hasn't happened yet. He's hard to tie down,
Yeah.
Gotta lock him in. I think you guys will be able to do it though.
I'm pretty sure you can get him there too.
Yeah, I love what you all are doing. So thank you so much for doing this work, sharing your story, having me on, all the other amazing guests.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what happens.
And is proud the right word? I don't know. I'm proud of you guys because I know that you're meeting resistance or did meet resistance with doing this too.
Well, and back at you. It's been
thank
kind of
you.
a similar journey. And you've already put yours out there. We haven't posted yet. So once our first one goes up, I'll probably be calling you to tap over all the fear.
That's possible. I have had to tap after.
I'm afraid.
I know. It's funny. But, just part of it getting ready to expand.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I love it.
All
love
right.
you guys. Thank you so much.
Yep,
Love you
back.
back. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening today. Hopefully this podcast was helpful in some way, shape, or form, or inspirational. If you know somebody else out there that you think might get something out of it,
pass it along. You can like it. You can share it. You can tune into the next episode. You can find us on Instagram at Bread and Jandy and follow us there. Peace out.
Till next time, guys.